Good morning. We are here today for a historic moment. The leaders of the Senate and Assembly have come together to introduce a package of immigration bills that unequivocally state California's commitment to immigrants. I want to thank the bill authors for being here today and for their efforts with this package. That is Speaker Atkins, Speaker of the California State Assembly, Assembly members Hernandez, Gonzalez, Levine, Eggman, and Thurman, and Senators Lara and Pan. I also want to recognize Senator Block, the chair of the Jewish Caucus, as well as the vice chair, Senator Hall, of the Black Legislative Caucus. I also want to thank the chairs of the Asian Pacific Islander Legislative Caucus, that is Mr. Das Williams, the chair of the Latino Caucus, that is Mr. Luis Alejo, the chair of the Women's Caucus, that is Senator Hannah Beth Jackson, and the chair of the LGBT Caucus, that is Assemblywoman Susan Eggman Talamantes, for their very strong support. E pluribus unum is a Latin phrase etched in our currency. It means out of many, one. That is what we are as a nation, but especially as Californians. California has grown into the greatest state in the nation and the world's 7th largest economy on the backs of settlers from all over this country and immigrants from many others. Our infrastructure, our railroads, our roads and bridges were built by immigrants. Our food, our clothing, our music, art, and technology. These are industries central to California's advancement, and they're all driven by immigrants. Immigrants shape California. Whether from Ellis Island or Angel Island, across the Rio Grande, Mexicali with Calexico, Tijuana with San Isidro, and San Diego. There is no Mexican America, or Irish America, or Japanese America, or Indian America. There is only America. It is the fabric of our nation, of our DNA. This is who we are and always have been, a nation of immigrants. I ask this of the nation. What is it that we fear in opening our arms to the millions already working and contributing to this country? By giving in to fear, by persecuting and alienating those who come to our nation in search of a better life, we create many of the problems we seek to avoid. By forcing undocumented immigrants to live and work in the shadows, we all lose. We lose wages, we lose revenue, we lose innovation, we lose justice, and most importantly, we lose our identity. When an undocumented immigrant cannot report a crime against themselves or others without fear of deportation, we allow injustice. When we cut off opportunities for bright, young dreamers, we limit our own potential. This is not smart social policy, and it is not smart economic policy. Today, we remind the rest of the nation that California is different. We respect immigrants and recognize the contributions that they have made to this state from the very beginning. We serve as a model for the country. But as we all know, we haven't always been so welcoming either. We've come a long way in California, a long way since the days of the Chinese Exclusion Act, the mass deportation of Mexican laborers during the Great Depression, and the Japanese internment during World War II. Just 20 years ago, with Proposition 187, we scapegoated immigrants in moments of economic hardship. Last year, as a testament to our progress, we removed Proposition 187's unconstitutional language from our books. We have provided driver's license for the undocumented, stronger labor laws for immigrant workers, in-state tuition and financial aid for dreamers, protection from unjust deportation, and the list goes on. And California is better for it. But there remain many barriers for the undocumented, barriers that limit their full potential, and therefore our state's full potential. We can do more, and will do more. And so, we are proud to introduce this package of bills that will improve the lives of California immigrants. This is a joint effort between the Senate and the Assembly. And for that, I thank Speaker Atkins, as well as the authors, for their leadership. We are joined by a coalition of state leaders and community advocates that represent the millions of Californians who will be impacted positively by these policies. Now, before we have the next speakers, I'd just like to share a few words in Spanish. Muy buenos días. Me siento muy honrado hoy día de estar con ustedes. Hoy día es un momento histórico. Como su servidor, presidente del Senado, y Toni Atkins, la presidenta de la Cámara Baja de la Asamblea, reafirmamos colectivamente como líderes de este ramo legislativo en voz muy alta e inequívocamente nuestro compromiso a los inmigrantes, presentando un paquete de proyectos de ley en California para protegerlos. La forma en que tratamos a los inmigrantes reflejará el compromiso de los valores que tengamos como americanos. Agradezco a todos los electos oficiales hoy día que se unen con nosotros en este gran esfuerzo. Los inmigrantes le dan forma a California. Yo pregunto esto a la nación. ¿A qué le tenemos miedo al abrir nuestros brazos a millones de personas que ya viven entre nosotros? Al dar el paso al temor, al perseguir y apartar a aquellos que vienen a nuestra nación en busca de una vida mejor, estamos creando muchos de los problemas que buscamos evitar. A forzar a los inmigrantes indocumentados a vivir y trabajar en las sombras, todos, y quiero enfatizar y subrayar, todos perdemos. Perdemos salarios justos, perdemos ingresos, perdemos innovación, perdemos justicia y lo más importante, perdemos nuestra identidad como californianos, como americanos. Hoy les recordamos al resto de la nación que California es diferente. Respetamos a los inmigrantes y reconocemos las contribuciones económicas que han hecho a este estado desde el principio. Servimos como un modelo para el país, pero no siempre hemos sido muy acogedores. Hemos recorrido un largo camino desde los días, desde el acta de exclusión china, la deportación masiva de trabajadores mexicanos y el encarcelamiento de los japoneses durante la Segunda Guerra Mundial. Hace solo 20 años, 2 décadas, con la proposición 187, hicimos como chivos expiatorios a los inmigrantes en los momentos de economía muy difícil. Hemos logrado las licencias hoy día de conducir para los residentes, los indocumentados, gracias a los legisladores de la Asamblea y del Senado. Reformamos las leyes laborales para los trabajadores inmigrantes, para los Dreamers, la ayuda financiera y la matrícula estatal, la protección contra las deportaciones injustas y la lista continúa. Y por eso estamos orgullosos de presentar este paquete de proyectos de la ley que mejorarán las vidas de los inmigrantes de California. Esto es un esfuerzo conjunto entre el Senado y la Asamblea y agradezco mucho a la presidenta de la Cámara Baja de la Asamblea, la presidenta Toni Atkins y todos los autores presentes hoy día de la Asamblea y del Senado. A la señora Atkins, gracias por su liderazgo. A los líderes hoy día presentes colectivamente, los líderes comunitarios, aquellos que encabezan grupos que alzan su voz día tras día, mes tras mes, haciendo todo lo posible para mejorar la condición humana por los inmigrantes, los más marginados en la 7ª potencia mundial. Gracias por su apoyo, gracias por el esfuerzo, gracias por el liderato de estos gran jóvenes Dreamers. With great pleasure, I have an opportunity to introduce the chair of the Asian Pacific Islander Caucus, that is Mr. Das Williams.
Thank you. Thank you for your impassioned advocacy. I'm here to just talk about, from the perspective of Asian and Pacific Islanders in the state, this is an important package of bills, and the continued advocacy of the legislature on behalf of immigrants continues to be vital. Nearly 60% of Asian Americans are foreign-born, making up 3.1 million residents. 1.3 million undocumented Asians and Pacific Islanders live in the United States today, and of that, nearly half a million undocumented live in California. We make up 15% of the total undocumented population in this state, and that's why it's so important that we had the successful implementation of our state's DREAM Act and the Trust Act, and we've served as a model for the rest of the nation, that we can be successful when including and caring for all of our immigrant populations. Nonetheless, we have work to do. Comprehensive immigration reform is a necessity. Even with executive action, there will still be families that live in the shadows. That is why it's so important that California hold the time, that we continue to advocate as a legislature and as a state, and that is what this package of bills do. It continues progress that is within our power as a state and continues to put pressure where it is needed on the federal government to take further action. As a result, I just want to thank, and I'm pleased to stand with the Senate Pro Tem de León, Speaker Atkins, the Latino Caucus, and a coalition of elected officials and community leaders in the introduction of the Immigrants Shape California legislative package. And with that, I want to bring up my brother Luis Alejo from the Latino Caucus and just say that we will continue to work to make sure that hardworking, tax-paying immigrants can come out of the shadows. Luis?
Thank you very much. It's good to be here on behalf of my colleagues in the Latino Legislative Caucus. My comments are in Spanish. Mi nombre es Luis Alejo, el presidente de la bancada de los legisladores latinos. Estoy muy orgulloso de estar aquí con nuestro presidente, Kevin de León, nuestra presidente de la Asamblea, Toni Atkins, y mi colega Das Williams, y todos mis colegas que se vinieron a estar aquí hoy para empujar este paquete de legislación en apoyo de las personas más marginadas, nuestra gente indocumentada. Sabemos que California ha estado esperando por demasiado tiempo para ver acción sobre la reforma migratoria al nivel federal. El estado del sistema de inmigración actual no está solo lleno de barreras y errores, pero simplemente es inaceptable. Esto daña nuestra economía y es un gran obstáculo para que todas estas personas que trabajan duro y contribuyen a nuestras comunidades puedan alcanzar el sueño americano. Nuestro país fue fundado por inmigrantes. Ellos son nuestra base para la economía próspera y abundante, pero nuestro estado particularmente depende de la comunidad inmigrante que trabajan duro. Hay más de 2.5 millones de californianos elegibles para solicitar la ciudadanía y 1.5 millones elegibles para aplicar para el alivio de deportación y obtener un permiso de trabajar debajo del programa DAPA, muchos de los cuales tienen mucho tiempo viviendo aquí en nuestro estado de California. Los inmigrantes son una gran parte fundamental de California, contribuyendo a nuestra economía y comunidades en todas las regiones y industrias. Nuestro estado ha aprobado una nueva ley histórica para mejorar las vidas de los inmigrantes. Me siento orgulloso de haber escrito la ley AB 60 que permite a inmigrantes indocumentados para solicitar una licencia de conducir en nuestro estado. Solamente desde el 2 de enero, casi la mitad de 1 millón de californianos han solicitado una licencia de conducir, y eso es lo doble lo que esperaba el DMV abajo de esta nueva ley. Y ya más de 200,000 personas inmigrantes ya obtuvieron una licencia en la mano. A pesar de los progresos en muchas cuestiones de derechos de inmigrantes, California todavía tiene que desarrollar una estrategia global para la integración de los inmigrantes. Es sumamente importante invertir en recursos para ayudar a superar a los obstáculos y a la ciudadanía y a la legalización. En nombre de los legisladores latinos de nuestro estado, estoy orgulloso de estar aquí con mis colegas apoyando esta legislación y siempre diciendo que los inmigrantes siguen moviendo California adelante. Muchas gracias. And next, we are calling up Angie Junck, attorney with the Immigrant Legal Resource Center, who will speak on California's efforts in a national context.
With Congress's failure to pass immigration reform and many leaders doubling down on anti-immigrant policies that further target and marginalize immigrants, there is no greater time for the California State Senate and Assembly to again show its steadfast commitment to passing reforms that California's immigrants so desperately need. California has already proven to be the nation's leader on passing laws and reforming policies that protect immigrant communities. The legislation introduced today only further solidifies that position. California is the most immigrant-rich state in America. Half of our state's children live in households where at least one parent is foreign-born. But right now, our justice system exposes these families and California's communities to unnecessary and extreme heartbreak. This legislative package focuses on protecting the most marginalized in our immigrant communities, from young people to victims of crime and others who have interacted with our state justice systems. These are especially vulnerable groups who have been overlooked time and again during the immigration policy debate, but not today and not in California. These bills will help ensure that immigrant children have protections that they need to grow up safe and free from violence and neglect. They will help ensure that immigrants have access to fair, honest, competent legal representation when they need it. And they will help ensure that immigrants aren't punished unfairly for offenses they've already faced justice for. Taken together, these pieces of legislation will right many wrongs that currently exist in our federal immigration system, strengthening California's immigrants and communities and setting California apart as a leader in smart and effective policy reform. Thank you.
Muy buenos días. Good morning. My name is Juan Jose Gutierrez. I represent Vamos Unidos USA and the Full Rights for Immigrants Coalition. And I'm grateful to Senate Pro Tem Senator Kevin De León for inviting me to be here. I think this is a very important day. And I won't mention any of the things that other speakers have said, and more than others will. But I will say this. The genius of America has been its incredible capacity to integrate throughout its history wave after wave of immigrants from across and throughout the world. Our state, as the senator correctly points out, is the most powerful economic state in the whole entire planet. And part, or a big reason for it, is the incredible immigrant population that has made the economy of this state the greatest one in the planet. So I'm very proud to be here, remembering that back in 1993, the greatness of this state was challenged when the right to a driver's license was taken away by the legislature of this great state. But move forward 20 years and we recover that right. That hasn't made the state weaker, it's made it greater. And so I'm very proud to be here. These 10 bills that are being introduced today places the state in the cutting edge of what this nation ought to be doing for its immigrants. Thank you very much to the legislators of this great state, the assembly members and the senators for what you're doing. You're setting an example that soon will become the trend in this great nation. Everybody says across the United States that California is the trendsetter, and it's true. Back in 93 and 94 with Proposition 187, we unleashed the most ferocious anti-immigrant campaign in U.S. history. But today, in 2015, thank God, we're unleashing the kind of motion and commotion that's going to transform this country for the better. I'm very proud to be standing with all of you today. Thank you very much. And now let me introduce Ms. Nubia Gutierrez, a single mother and domestic violence survivor, denied a U visa. She will talk about her challenges as a parent of an undocumented child.
Hola, buenos días. Mi nombre es Nubia Gutierrez. Soy residente de Stockton. Soy madre de 4 maravillosos hijos. 2 de ellos nacieron en México. Juntos nos emigramos a los Estados Unidos cuando ellos eran infantes. Mis otros 2 hijos son ciudadanos americanos. Comparto mi historia para llamar la atención a los muchos obstáculos que diariamente atravieso. Trabajo duro para mantener a mis hijos, en particular a mi hijo de 13 años que tiene parálisis cerebral. Desafortunadamente, por mi estatus migratorio, los obstáculos que enfrento a veces se sienten insuperables. Soy sobreviviente de violencia doméstica. Reporté mis circunstancias a la policía para escapar a la violencia, aunque participé con la investigación haciéndome elegible para una visa U. El alguacil de San Joaquín negó la certificación sin explicación. La visa U me hubiera proporcionado un estatus legal para vivir y trabajar en los Estados Unidos. Buscaba esa protección no solo para mí, más que por mí, por mis hijos. Como todos los padres, quiero lo mejor para ellos. Los quiero proteger y ayudarlos a vivir una vida buena. Entonces estoy aquí para apoyar estos proyectos de ley que ayudarán a los padres inmigrantes como yo a hacer lo mejor para nuestros hijos. Gracias.
We have 2 more speakers, and then a speaker of the Assembly, Toni Atkins, will close us off. We have Mei Pang. Mei Pang.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mei Pang, and I am a community organizer and a member from Aspire, the first Pan-Asian undocumented youth-led group in the country. I came to the United States from Singapore when I was 14 because my parents were fleeing economic persecution as a result of the Asian stock market crash. My dad got a job at a restaurant, and we were scammed because his boss never filed for a visa for our family, and as a result, our family became undocumented. There were many challenges that we faced growing up as undocumented. My dad would work 18 hours in a dangerous kitchen under minimum wage, where his boss would periodically threaten us about calling the cops and about deporting us. We had no access to health care, where the emergency room was our primary health care. When I had a sinus infection a few years ago, I had to go to the ER after enduring a fever over 3 days. We also constantly lived in a fear of deportation, and that was really the scariest part of being undocumented, because we don't think about undocumented people as Asian people, and we don't think that Asian people are undocumented, even though our communities are riddled with poverty and we experience so many different sets of exploitation. In order to be able to fit in, we were stereotyped as the model minorities, and we are unable to get acknowledgement for the violence that our family experienced. However, after joining Aspire, after finding a safe space where we were able to challenge the kind of systemic violence that led to our personal experiences, we found an outlet to build safe spaces, to cultivate the kind of leadership and also community so that we are able to create real systemic changes in our community. From fighting deportation cases to being able to advocate for legislative changes, we are able to ensure that the needs of our communities are being represented. We want to, through our work with our coalitional partners, be able to make California the model for the rest of the United States to really ensure that there is a true democracy where we all live in. Thank you very much.
Our last speaker before our official speaker of the Assembly will be Ruby Castanon.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Selena Ruby Castanon. I am 18 years old and a citizen of the United States. I am here as a child of an undocumented immigrant who has undergone challenges due to living in a mixed status family. My mother suffers constantly from the pain that her medical condition causes daily. Because she is undocumented, she is not able to receive the proper treatment to minimize her pain. Despite my mother's struggles, I suffer as well. First off, it's not easy having to see a loved one go about her day with much more difficulty than most people. I can honestly say that my mother does not live a normal life, but was once a hard worker that did everything she could to give her children a better future. I suffer because I live in constant fear of being left in this country without my parents. I have also lost my father due to deportation. Losing both of my parents would be devastating because no child should have to bear the pain of being separated from their family. And we are one of the many families that encounter these problems that conflict undocumented immigrant parents with children who are citizens. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It is both an honor and a privilege to be with all of you here today, my colleagues and my partner, President Pro Tem from the Senate, De León. Thank you. You know, in closing this morning, I just want to underscore a couple of key takeaway points. Immigrants, documented and undocumented, are woven into every part of California's social fabric and make a huge contribution to our economic strength. Immigrants have the same hopes and challenges that all Californians do, but they also face unique burdens, especially those Californians still forced to live in the shadows. The Assembly and the Senate are pursuing this package of legislation with the support of a broad coalition of advocates. You heard from some incredible people today, to protect the rights, the health, the safety of California's immigrants and to preserve their ability to participate in our economy and our society. Congress hasn't been able to even discuss immigration in a responsible way, let alone come together on solutions. So here in California, the legislature is stepping up. With these bills, California will again show the kind of practical, humane, and forward-thinking leadership that we hope can move the needle on a national discussion. Thank you so much for being here today, and we are ready to take questions.
So what we'll do right now is we'll open it for Q&A. The speaker and I are ready for questions. We'll also have the authors of the measures here today before us. If you have any questions for the authors themselves, that is Senators Lara as well as Pan, Assembly Members Thurman, Levine, Gonzalez, Hernandez, Alejo. If there's anyone else that I'm missing, you know, please just give me a gentle tap. Ms. Eggman as well. Or for that matter of any of the advocates. Questions? Jessica.
Specifically about the bill that would expand Medi-Cal coverage to undocumented immigrants, can you explain how the state would pay for that?
I don't know if Senator Ricardo Lara is here. We'll bring him here. What we can say is this, is that this is a measure that we support. This is a measure that Senator Ricardo Lara is engaging with the federal authorities right now as we speak. We have made it clear also, too, we have to do so in a manner that does not burden the general fund of the state of California. So we have to use innovation, creativity. We have to engage the feds on this issue. I know that Senator Ricardo Lara has been very busy going back and forth to Washington, D.C., and trying to work with the federal government as we speak right now. So hopefully he'll be able to come here. If not, then we should do one-on-one.
But let's also be clear, there is a huge cost to the taxpayers in California not to have coverage.
Exactly.
So I think that it is a challenge to figure out how to cover medical costs. But there's a bigger challenge to not doing it in many ways, to our economy and to the health of people and to the taxpayer.
Senator Lara.
Hi. What was the question?
How are we going to cost to pay for it?
About the bill that would expand Medi-Cal coverage to undocumented immigrants, how the state would pay for it, and also could you expand on the conversations you've had with lawmakers or regulators in Washington?
Great, absolutely. First of all, let me just say, when I started in 2001 in this building with a little bill called AB 540, it was hard enough to get Democrats to come in support of that legislation, and to see now that the leadership of both the Assembly and the Senate are here advocating on behalf of our most vulnerable Californians is something that I think is historic. I think it's a historic first. And so I want to first commend the Speaker of the Assembly and our President Pro Tem for having the courage to do this and the leadership, because, you know, as members, it's easy for us to continue to advocate for folks that, you know, live in the shadows. But when you become leader of the House, you have much a different responsibility, and to see that they have never wavered from being a member to now being leaders in their houses on behalf of our most vulnerable Californians is something that I want to personally commend them. The conversations that I've had last week in Washington, D.C., seeking a waiver to ensure that we know that of the 2 million Californians that are undocumented, 30% of them can qualify, can actually afford to pay into the ACA, the current ACA program. And that is without any federal subsidies. These are small business owners that can afford to pay. And so we met with Nancy Pelosi's staff, we met with Zoe Lofgren's immigration folks, and we continue to meet with folks throughout Washington to ensure that we try to get that waiver. Again, this is different than what we did last year with the bill. Again, ensuring that we're cutting down the cost. We're not doing a mirror exchange. Instead, we're asking for this waiver from the feds. We know that with DAPA, that's cut the folks that will qualify under SB 4 by half. So again, limiting the costs for this bill. The other thing we know is, given the fact that there's precedent that the feds are matching our Medi-Cal funding with the PRUCAL folks, which are people living under the color of law, that we will continue to receive that funding once we expand Medi-Cal to include the remaining folks that can't be covered. Those numbers currently are being worked out, but I can tell you we've brought it down from what we once thought would be $1 million to close to 400 to 800 million a year. So it looks like it's something that's doable to cover folks. Keep in mind that we're currently spending approximately $1.7 billion annually on emergency room care, and that's very, very selective care. That's not, that's only emergency care. That doesn't help with any preventative, anything that we can help in terms of a long-term health plan for undocumented folks' families. So thank you.
I'm curious to know what kind of support are you getting from your Republican colleagues? I see all this legislation is from Democrats, but I want to know what kind of support are you getting from them?
Go ahead. I'm Assemblymember Mark Levine. I had a bill, AB 899, on the privacy for juveniles that was before Assembly Judiciary this morning. Went out of committee unanimously with bipartisan support. So I think that there's a great hope here that as we're protecting, as Senator Lara had described, a very vulnerable population, that there is bipartisan support and agreement on many of these issues.
What I can say, and I'm sure I speak for Speaker Atkins as well too, is that the package of bills, we view it as a bipartisan package. We view it as a package that Republicans can be supportive of. And that's our hope, that the Republicans will be supportive of the measure, of all the measures. Obviously, they will ultimately have to make their decision. I know that on the Senate side, we do have a handful of Republicans who are supportive of immigration reform. We're trying to lobby them, to lobby their colleagues back in Washington, D.C., to do the right thing. Be mindful about one thing. The package of bills that are before us is a reflection, a direct reflection of the brokenness of Washington, D.C. We are doing the work of the federal Congress. And this is a reaction to the lack of action that the taxpayers are paying for the salaries of these members of Congress. All you have to do is go down the road, down 99, and speak with the leader of the Republicans, the majority leader, Kevin McCarthy, and ask him when he's going to move forward with immigration reform. So this is a reflection of the dereliction of duty of these members of Congress, either their intellectual laziness or lack of work ethic on this issue.
bills here is for the U visa, and what I have heard is that U visas are hard to get because law enforcement, you need a law enforcement signature, and a lot of agencies are just don't want to get involved. So does this bill address that at all, or how would you address that problem? Go right ahead.
The U visa is a measure that both Speaker Toni Atkins and I are joint authoring together. It is a measure for victims of sexual assaults, of rape, of violence, domestic violence. Those are examples of those who qualify in this measure. To validate or certify the process, ultimately that goes before the feds, local law enforcement have to be this local certifier. The reality is, for example, there are some counties and local law enforcement agencies who do an exemplary job. There are other local law enforcement agencies, Kern County in particular, that have had cases before them of young children who have been sodomized, young women, teenagers who have been raped, and for fear of deportation, for fear of hanging around too long to testify in court, they were never certified by the local law enforcement agencies. So it seems that certain local law enforcement agencies throughout the state of California are taking into their own hands the subjectiveness of whether one belongs in this country or not, irrespective of the crime that has been committed or perpetuated, either against the victim themselves or they themselves have become a witness of a crime. So this measure will make it clear that all local law enforcement agents mandatorily will have to comply with the U visa process. They cannot subjectively start making immigration calls themselves.
With the new visa for Office for Americans that you say it's like for integration, what type, and that you're going to create services for immigration naturalization, but what kind of like office exactly would that mean? Like integration to the system or society, or just guidelines to an eventual executive action? Or?
That measure is, I believe, Senator Ricardo Lares is
Yeah.
too. Here. Mr. Immigration.
Yeah, if you can do it in Spanish, that would be great.
Muy bien. Sí, lo que queremos lograr con la Oficina de Nuevos Americanos es lo que estamos viendo actualmente, que cada ciudad en California tiene diferentes programas donde ayudan a los inmigrantes. Eso queríamos que la oficina a nivel estatal, debajo de la oficina del gobernador, un individuo en el cual pudieran coordinar todo lo que está sucediendo a nivel estatal en términos de cómo proteger a nuestros inmigrantes, cómo ayudarles a obtener recursos y cómo ayudarles a entender qué son los derechos humanos que tienen ellos como californianos en el estado. Al igual, a nivel estatal no hay ningún otro estado en el cual se están coordinando con el gobierno federal y cómo proteger a la comunidad inmigrante, que vemos desde que hemos empezado a promulgar leyes como la AB 540, apoyar a los estudiantes indocumentados, salen notarios, salen abogados en el cual quieren ayudar a las personas, pero nomás simplemente los estafan. Entonces, eso también para proteger a esa comunidad que es vulnerable y también mandarles la señal que aquí en California se les va a proteger y se les respeta como humanos, algo que no se está viendo a nivel federal.
We'll take 2 more questions and then we'll just close it off.
Gracias. Muy buenos días a todos.
Buenos días.
Nosotros nos hacemos una pregunta que está pues teniendo en cuenta todo lo que pasó con la ley federal. Un error de procedimiento en la norma supuestamente ha hecho que la oposición coja el tema y la demande. Hoy todos quedamos con la esperanza de algo que iba a cambiar y no pasó. Este paquete de medidas todavía tiene un proceso por recorrer. Sabemos, como usted mismo lo dijo, que estamos en un juego político ahora contra lo que más y buscamos el apoyo de los republicanos. Pero, ¿qué pasa? ¿Podemos salir nosotros los periodistas a decirle eso a la gente? ¿Podemos volver a esperanzarnos? ¿Podemos volver a decirle a los demás que sí vamos a tener esas normas? ¿O eso todavía está muy confuso? Yo sé que es un juego político, pero ¿qué tan fuerte estamos nosotros contra eso?
Bueno, yo no te puedo decir exactamente qué debes divulgar, ¿no? Los televidentes, aquellos que van a leer sus diarios. Lo que puedo decir, sí, lo que puedo decir claramente, no, con certeza, que hoy día colectivamente con los activistas, aquellos que son líderes comunitarios, aquellos como la presidenta Toni Atkins, los líderes Hernández, Levine, Thurman, Eggman, Senator Pan, Lara, Luis Alejo, que el pueblo latino e inmigrante tiene nuestro compromiso para llevar a cabo un paquete de defensa de los inmigrantes, los derechos plenos civiles de los inmigrantes, porque que quede muy claro, con toda la certeza, ¿no? Que quede muy claro ante todo el Estado de California, a lo largo y ancho del Estado y también a lo largo y ancho del gran país, que aquí en el Estado de California, que los inmigrantes tienen eco y tienen respuesta. Y aquí reconocemos los derechos plenos de los inmigrantes porque reconocemos las contribuciones a las arcas presupuestales. Claro que esto es el comienzo de un sendero, ¿no?, del proceso legislativo que se va a llevar a cabo en los varios comisiones de la política pública, de la Cámara Baja, de la Asamblea y la Cámara Alta del Senado. Esto es el comienzo de este inicio, más que nada, ¿no? Lo que pedimos a todos, no solamente a los latinos, pero los asiáticos, los anglosajones, los afroamericanos, aquellos sin y con papeles, aquellos que son ciudadanos, ¿no? Es su apoyo para este paquete de medidas.
Senador, ¿hay compromiso, hay los votos suficientes para aprobar este paquete de medidas? Y en segundo lugar, corto, por favor, en caso que se apruebe la visa U, ¿sería de carácter retroactivo?
Perdón, la última es...
La visa U sería carácter retroactivo. Por ejemplo, ¿la señora podría aplicar con esa nueva norma?
Bueno, pues, sí, la respuesta es sí. You want to say something?
What was his question?
Bueno, la pregunta es si hay votos suficientes.
Sí, hay votos suficientes.
Bueno, yo no sé si hay votos suficientes,
Pero
estamos en eso.
¿Han sondeado a nivel de los otros parlamentarios?
Bueno, no hemos sondeado una encuesta, un sondeo de cada miembro de la legislatura, por eso es la apertura, por decir, ¿no?, de este paquete de medidas. Tenemos que colectivamente hacer nuestro trabajo, haciendo cabildeo con nuestros colegas de ambas cámaras, igual de ambos partidos políticos, los demócratas, igual como los republicanos. Pero hoy día mandaremos un mensaje bastante duro y directo con dos líderes de la Cámara Alta y la Cámara Baja, ¿no?, que estas medidas tienen nuestro apoyo absoluto, pero tenemos que hacer nuestro trabajo también, haciendo cabildeo con cada miembro de ambos partidos, de ambas cámaras, la Cámara Alta y la Cámara Baja.
Senador, volviendo al tema de la protección a víctimas de violencia doméstica, ¿podrías decirme brevemente en qué consiste este proyecto que presentan hoy tú y la asambleísta, por favor?
Sí, es muy sencillo, no es nada complicado. Como acabo de mencionar en inglés, hay miembros de agencias policíacas a nivel local que por X razones y motivos no han querido aprobar, certificar el proceso por una víctima de acoso sexual, por ejemplo, para conseguir a través de las autoridades federales el permiso temporal y el permiso de empleo, que es la visa U. Nuestra propuesta no va a dejar en las manos subjetivamente a los agentes policíacos la decisión. Nuestra propuesta va a ser en ley algo mandatorio para todos los agentes policíacos que tienen que certificar si la señora es víctima de acoso sexual, si el hijo es víctima de acoso sexual, tienen que, y no le quedan otra, y no pueden a través de un proceso subjetivo, porque quizás no están en favor de una reforma migratoria integral, que no van a firmar, certificar ese proceso. Eso no lo vamos a permitir bajo esa ley. Let's have the speaker close it out.
Thank you. If I could, as much as I could understand, I understand that there is uncertainty about whether we have the ability to do some of the things we want to do with the assistance and support of the federal government. But I would say this, and in terms of whether we will be successful, we have had bipartisan support on a number of pieces of legislation that we have already passed in the legislature. We represent all parts of California. If you look here behind me, you see representatives from all parts of California. I am optimistic and hopeful that we will have bipartisan support for a number of these pieces of legislation. Why? Because what affects people in California affects every single one of us. I know too many stories of individuals that live in San Diego that have been separated from their kids, from their parents, left alone either in San Diego or other parts of the state, families broken up. These are hardworking individuals who just want an opportunity. They deserve health care, they deserve education, they deserve the right to be full and participating members as Californians who contribute. And so this is not easy. It is not easy to pull together the support. Does it come with a cost? Yes. But does it also solve problems that we're trying very hard every day to resolve when we see people show up at emergency rooms and they're going to get costlier procedures than they would if they had adequate coverage and prevention? These are people who work in our fields, in our homes, in businesses. They own businesses. You know, this is the right thing to do. And if we thought this were easy, it would be done. D.C. would be doing something if it were easy. We intend to set the model. We intend to set the tone, as California always has, and we don't expect it to be easy, but we do expect to succeed. And so I thank you for your participation and your being here today. And to all of these advocates and individuals, we very much appreciate the support that we can get.